Please don't worry, you're not alone, and I can assure you that there is more than one person here. It is also worth mentioning that we'd love you to see our lovely faces live, but to ensure a smooth experience, we're going to keep to our headshots for this session. And on the note of smooth experience, do make sure that you've logged in via Google Chrome, as the LiveShare platform works best using this browser. So now the housekeeping's out of the way, let's have a look at today's speakers. So we'll be joined by a number of experts from across the industry. These include Martin Lauder, a change manager at Global Action Plan, Sarah Rye, head of public realm and security at the City of Westminster, Susanna Wilkes, director of Crossroads Partnership, Ross Phillips, a project officer here at Crossroads Partnership, and myself, also CRP, and I'll be chairing today's LiveShare session. We'll also be joined by Anusha Rajamani, project officer here at CRP, and she'll be moderating the chat facility to the left of your screens. I'll come back to that feature in just a moment. And also Rachel Aldridge will be our tech lead for today's session. So during today's LiveShare session, we'll firstly provide you with a brief introduction to CRP, in addition to some of the projects we work on. We'll then move over to Martin Lauder from Global Action Plan, who will walk us through the importance of pedestrian priority streets, and we'll also talk about how this ties in with Clean Air Day 2020. We'll then be joined by Sarah Rye from Westminster City Council, and Sarah will be talking about Westminster's movement strategy and their timed street closures for trading. And last, but by no means least, Ross Phillips will talk more about making streets safe and the benefits for pedestrian priority streets for schools and communities. So during the live share, there will be a chance for you to have your say via a Q&A session after each presentation. As I've mentioned, Anusha will be moderating the chat facility to the left of your screens, so please do ask your questions in there during the presentations, stating your name and where you're from. We'll try our very best to answer all your questions, but if we are unable to due to time constraints, then please do contact us via email and we'll get back to you with a response. Our email addresses will be displayed at the very end of the session for you all. So before we make a start, we'd like to pose a question to you, the audience, just to get your views on things. So as we begin to ease out of lockdown, what are your views on the rollout of more pedestrian priority streets around schools, neighbourhoods and shopping areas? So we're really keen to open up a discussion on it. So please do pop your answers into the chat, and I know that Anusha will be sending that question into the chat for you now too. So do discuss it. We'd love to see your thoughts on it. So brilliant. Well, without further ado then, let's make a start. And I'd now like to pass you over to Susanna Wilkes, Director of Crossroads Partnership. Over to you, Susanna.
Thanks very much, Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us to learn about Power for Pedestrians and how to make the pedestrian and their experience very unpedestrian. As many of you know, Cross River Partnership was formed 26 years ago to build the Millennium Bridge across the River Thames. By now, we're actively helping with delivering London's future together with all sorts of government, business and community partners, each one of them interested in trying to build back better as we progress through COVID. CRP would like to thank its major funders for making this live share session possible: Central Government Units DEFRA and Innovate UK's Challenge Fund, plus the Mayor of London. CRP is delivering a wide range of projects. One of these, Clean Air Villages, is supporting businesses, the health sector and communities to keep London's air clean as COVID restrictions are switched on and off to varying degrees of intensity. Another, Healthy Streets Every Day, is working with 17 boroughs, landowners and others to reimagine all of London's streets, how they are used, by who, for what, and when. CRP's vision is to empower people to deliver innovative projects that support places to do more than survive and to truly thrive. And we have been enabling pedestrian priority streets for a number of years already. This is part of a play street that we set up with Westminster City Council back in 2017 as part of the first Transport for London funded low emission neighbourhood in Marylebone. The Play Street was a great way to showcase to residents just how different their street could be without vehicular traffic, and a great way for neighbours of all ages to meet each other, many for the first time. And while none of us would have chosen for the COVID pandemic to occur, it has provided an impetus for bold and urgent action in terms of London's streets. Boroughs are swiftly implementing low-emission neighbourhoods to prioritise pedestrians and cyclists, to clean up our air, and to remind us about physical distancing. Of course, these measures aren't universally popular, and it is beholden upon all of us planet preservers to take every possible opportunity to explain exactly how ultimately these measures really are good for everyone. I'm proud to have persuaded my window cleaner just this morning. Every little does help. So a truly green recovery from COVID is within our reach. We owe it to ourselves and to our children not to let this opportunity pass us by. With the right physical distancing interventions, with meticulous guidance and regulations, with intelligent and ongoing air quality monitoring, we can work together to prioritise pedestrians. Before I hand over to my colleague Martin Lauder of Global Action Plan, I would like to share this inspiring image with you. While we may not be able to replicate this scenery exactly on London streets, we should be aiming to lift people's bodies, souls and hearts as they go about their business on foot, breathing clean air, unhindered by a preponderance of unnecessary, unsafe and polluting vehicles. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Susan. Today, I have been given 10 minutes to talk to you all about the benefits of pedestrian priority streets, but also through the case study of Clean Air Day. Now, Global Action Plan, we are an environmental charity based in the UK, fueling the clean air movement, and we are also the coordinators of Clean Air Day. So, to kick us off, I'm aware that many of the joiners we've got on the call today might be one of our supporters, and others you might not have heard of Clean Air Day before. So starting at the top, Clean Air Day is the UK's biggest air pollution campaign. Normally in June, this year it has been moved to October the 8th for obvious reasons, which is just over about 55 days from now. So what is Clean Air Day? It helps drive positive shift in public knowledge and action, but it's also a chance to find out more about air pollution, from the sources through to the health effects and to the solutions. So a few slides to start off with around why Clean Air Day. So it improves public understanding of both indoor and outdoor. It increases public backing of air quality pollution measures and also mobilises action, which is very important. I've got a slide here which just shows at a glance Clean Air Day last year. Now I must say that Clean Air Day is made up of over 250 supporters around the UK. They stretch from organisations such as CRP, UNICEF, we've got British Cycling. I had a quick look through and saw Hackney Council who are joining this meeting. We've got plenty of local authorities, hospital trusts and organisations across the UK that come together on Clean Air Day. The messaging we use is also overseen by some of our partners at the Royal Colleges of Paediatrics and Physicians. What I'd like to say is that some of the impact from last year is that we had nearly 4,000 of our toolkits downloaded online. We had nearly 400 million opportunities to see through Sky and BBC Radio. So we thought it was a great success, but that does come down to the role that our supporters play. So what I've taken here are a couple slides from our celebration report, where we map out really what we've learned. I won't go through all of them, but just wanted to pull out a few that resonate with me. So the first is that Clean Air Day drives change. It really does increase public knowledge. Second, it brings thousands of advocates together on an important issue. It's an opportunity for people to experience cleaner air. So thanks to our supporters, we don't just see improvement in air quality, but we see quieter and safer streets. And it's very important for us to be talking about the co-benefits here, and not just the air quality changes. It's also an opportunity for us to trial measures. Our friends up in Scotland, in Edinburgh, trialled a pedestrianised area on Clean Air Day a few years back. Now, each month, that same street becomes pedestrianised. So it's good to see that our supporters are kind of setting the trend, really, and the Clean Air Day is a platform for them to build on. As we shoot on to the next page, I think the ones I like here are that Clean Air Day is an excuse for people to trial something new, but most importantly, it's also a day where we actually see changes in air quality. We know from stats like our research into the London Marathon that during the London Marathon, we saw pollution drop by 98%. And we hear time and time again from our supporters of these inspiration numbers happening when they take action. So what I want to talk about here is Clean Air Day this year, what to expect. Now, I'd say that social distancing is not a barrier to having clean air. So it's definitely going to be different this year. You'll see the map on the slide at the moment represents the events that we had around the country last year. Now, there will be a significant virtual element to Clean Air Day this year, but by all means, full steam ahead. This year, what's new? So our key messages are all around, we all have a part to play in keeping our air clean, and together, let's make October the 8th the cleanest Clean Air Day yet. As I'm sure other presenters will talk about today, we know that during the lockdown, we have seen and we have experienced cleaner air. We've seen massive shifts in low pollution behaviours, such as the uptake of cycling and walking. And Clean Air Day this year is about continuing momentum to keep those behaviours ticking along. Now, what I want to talk about here is a breakdown of our different audiences and what we're asking them to do on Clean Air Day this year. So for our local authorities, it's about communicating to residents the importance of clean air. I'll show you a screenshot in just a moment, but our cleanairhub.org.uk is a place where we've collected absolutely everything you need to know about air pollution, and it is our public-facing hub to go towards air quality. We'd also encourage local authorities to work with schools and businesses to achieve their aims that I'll go through now. So for schools, it's about holding a Clean Air Day event, running air pollution assemblies, to walking and cycling to school. A key ask for us this year is around school streets. Global Action Plan in mid-September will be launching our Clean Air for Schools framework, which is an online tool where a teacher or a head teacher or a parent can come along, type in some information about the school that they represent, and our trial and tested framework will calculate our recommendations as to the most appropriate interventions that that school can take on board to develop their own clean air plan. So it's definitely something to watch, and that will be happening in the next month. Jumping on to our businesses, our ask this year is around encouraging staff to work from home and really normalising working from home. We've got lots of resources on our Clean Air Day website that I'll talk you through in a second, but there's plenty on there for businesses to sink their teeth into. Our supporters include hospitals and trusts, and so our ask for health professionals are really to know the facts. So going to our Clean Air Hub website and digesting all the information there, so that you know that when you're communicating to your parents, the advice you're giving to them is correct. And finally, I know we've got a lot on the call today, charities and campaigning bodies. So we're encouraging you to support those in the ways I've mentioned before, and just sharing that their actions are significant in improving their quality. What I've got here are a selection of examples from the years gone by of Clean Air Day and what organisations have been doing, which of course include the pedestrianising of local areas. I won't go through all of these, but you'll see on your screen at the moment, bottom left, that is a councillor in Caerphilly, and Caerphilly Council arranged a clean air performance in Caerphilly Castle, where they invited students to walk and scoot their way to Caerphilly Castle on the day. And the students got to experience a clean air play in the grounds of the castle, which was very exciting. We've seen up in Glasgow, we've seen poster competitions of organisations, of schools and students' poster drawings being projected onto the side of buildings. We've seen free transport in the East Midlands, which was wonderful. Have a look. Another relevant one today is that we were with Great Ormond Street Hospital, and they wanted to begin with the world's greatest play street, which was very exciting, from hopscotch to face paints to dancing competitions. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for this one, but we have some great photos that really show the enjoyment of the day itself. And a few more examples before I round off. So with our businesses, predominantly, we've had a lot of pledges, everything from people pledging to car share, to cycle to work, to work from home. Now, we're aware that not all of these are appropriate this time with social distancing, but it's still a key ask of the campaign in general. Great, so there are a few examples. I'm sure others will talk about school streets today, but for those schools on the call and for local authorities, we do encourage you to work with the schools to trial play streets at the moment. The school streets, it's definitely a platform into the pedestrianising of local areas that we feel is important. What I wanted to mention and show you is this is the Clean Air Day website that has had a facelift this year. On here, as I mentioned, you will find access to lots of resources. Now, as supporters of Clean Air Day, and anyone on the call that isn't, my email address is at the end of this presentation. Do get in contact with us. It's completely free. You'll get your logo on our website, and you'll be part of our newsletter that promotes the latest air quality news and updates, but also we'll let you know what's happening throughout the campaign, including our 50-day countdown means that will begin next week, 50 days before Clean Air Day. The resources on the website are aimed at the audiences we've spoken about. They include everything from PR, social media packs for local authorities, through to how-to guides for school streets, and also just a range of case studies where others have succeeded before you. This is a screenshot of our Clean Air Hub, just to familiarise yourself with the website. As I said, this is our public-facing website where we push the public to really increase their knowledge. For clarity, the Clean Air Day website is where we encourage organisers to go to get the resources to then in turn engage the public. Just a few more slides left before I'll pass you on. You'll see here the importance of all the behaviours that we're highlighting this year, particularly around leaving the car at home, giving your car a day off, and working from home as much as possible. Of course, if driving is essential, you can see on the screen there that there are things to consider, but a main theme this year, which tends to run through most years, is that the less we use the car, the better. And then finally, a few more actions that make up the rest of our campaign. So avoiding burning at home, but then also wising up. I know we're going to talk today around the importance of why now is a great time to champion for clean air behaviours. So we think, firstly, everybody wising up and increasing their knowledge on air quality is important, supporting local change, and also sharing your experiences. I'm sure you're all keen to learn and to take learnings from others. So sharing case studies and best practice is definitely the way forward. Right, Tom, that is me all done. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin. Yeah, let's try and open up a bit of a discussion then, shall we? We've got about 4 minutes, so let's give it a go. Do you think then that pedestrian priority streets could increase the possible risk of infection, particularly as many people may want to drive and they won't be able to drive, or maybe there's a lot of people who have underlying health conditions already? Do you think that we're looking at, if we're imposing these pedestrian priority streets and putting them in place, are we at more risk of increasing that risk of infection between people who are using these particular streets? Oh, I can see, I've just requested Martin's audio. I can see that it's just gone off there. Can you hear us, Martin?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are on that, Martin.
Yeah, good question. I'd expect most people to agree with my answer on this one. But of course, the more space that we have in general, the better, especially given social distancing. School streets in particular, not having those peak times of drop off and pick up. There's more space for people to move around. I think pedestrian areas in local communities is definitely a good thing, and I don't think that it's a risk of infection any more than other areas at all.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Mike. Martin. Okay, then let's then look at, so obviously for Clean Air Day, what's kind of your view on the pedestrian priority streets? I know you mentioned it briefly. Are you looking to have many of these potentially rolled out for the day itself, and do you think that any of them should now then remain permanent, or are you looking for it just to kind of be more kind of the annual event occurrence kind of thing?
Of course. So yes, Clean Air Day for us is a focal point for people to use that day to build on the movement that others are doing. Definitely, we'd like to see pedestrianised streets continue. I think that local authorities at the moment, those that are acting first are basically our live case studies of what's happening, and those that are using the experimental traffic orders, I believe. So slightly different for local authorities, where it's my understanding that they can now organise pedestrian streets, but through the experimental traffic order, which means that they don't need to have consultations in advance. Instead, they can make the change and then look for feedback through the community, and to do it that way, so the public essentially decide. I think our early adopters of local authorities that are doing this are just setting the trend, and so I think it's definitely not an annual thing. And just as we saw from one of the case studies I spoke about up in Scotland, it's almost like a test and a trial to show just how beneficial they can be, not just through air quality, but for safer roads, quieter streets, etc.
Brilliant. Well, okay. Well, thank you very much, Martin. What we'll now do is, because I can see that we're closing up on a little bit of time, so we'll head over to Sarah. But thank you very much for your talk today. It was great. Thank you, Martin.
No problem.
Brilliant. So I've flicked too far. So great. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Rye. Sarah's the head of public realm and security at the City of Westminster, and so I'll be talking more about Westminster's movement strategy and their timed street closures for trading. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me along today to talk to you about Westminster's public realm response to COVID-19. And as you've implied, some of that strategy, the movement strategy as we've called it, is looking at timed street closures. What I wanted to just go through with you today, I was going to start with a photograph at the beginning there, slightly raises some interesting questions. I was thinking while we were listening to Martin respond about pedestrianised streets, seeing as how many people there are sitting in that photo, but I'm sure we can come back to that in questions or in the chat. What I wanted to speak to you about today was the development of Westminster's movement strategy, our key areas of focus that we focused on interventions, how we've split it into two phases. The first phase was focused on supporting strategic walking and cycling and the opening of non-essential businesses in early June. And the second phase was very firmly focused around the supporting of businesses and the opening of the hospitality industry in early July, as set out in this photograph. And then I just wanted to go through briefly some of the outcomes and impacts, particularly on businesses and schools, given the title of this seminar, and what our next steps are. So obviously, when we were in lockdown and in this scenario, as officers, we were looking around at opportunities and looking at what was happening in other cities that went down into lockdown prior to us, and obviously coming out beforehand for direction on how people were responding. Our wonderful place shaping team who put together this presentation for me always like to start presentations with a quote, and I have to say actually this one's really quite pertinent, from the Mayor of Milan. Our immediate priority is to protect the health of our residents and overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. From Westminster's perspective, I would also put businesses as well as residents in how we've looked to support in the short term to overcome the immediate impacts of the pandemic. But then, in one sense, the very interesting part is, however, we must almost look towards how we will keep our people safe in the future, which is the ongoing concern of what the new normal might look like, and how we structure our recovery efforts will define our cities for the decades to come. I'm sure many of you had those conversations about this being a once in a lifetime, once in a generation opportunity. So, obviously this started us thinking about how we would need to respond to the pandemic, and as the city came out of lockdown, and how we could support that. And our immediate response, which is the movement strategy, is how we immediately responded to coming out of the pandemic. But obviously this will now evolve into how we think about things longer term. And as I said at the beginning, we took our cues from other cities. So there's a rather nice slide here sort of showing some of the ideas from Berlin, Barcelona and Paris, varying in different scales, from prioritising cycling, looking at how you can improve the public realm, create more space to people move around safely in, and creating those pedestrian priority streets. And it also became noticeable that things were actually going to have to come out in a short, medium and long term solutions, where you need to react immediately to the situation, and then that more longer term strategic conversation about what the impacts of this pandemic could potentially have on the structure of our cities going forward. So with regard to the movement strategy that we developed within Westminster, it was very much focused on the immediate action that we would need to take to support businesses and residents, not so much visitors because they've all kind of gone and not quite come back yet, but certainly businesses and residents and workers as they came back and started moving around the city again. We identified sort of 6 key areas that we wanted to focus on our interventions. The first one was like transport hubs, where people were potentially coming into the city in congested areas. So we needed to look at how we could sort of support those areas to make sure that people could feel safe moving around in those environments. We wanted to pick out key walking and strategic cycling routes so that people could move around the city safely in these more sustainable modes of traffic, transport that the people were preferring. There was also a focus on high streets and town centres. This was in the first phase, particularly supporting the opening of non-essential businesses. So this is, for example, where people are going to have to queue outside supermarkets, ensuring there was enough pavement space to allow that to happen. There was a key focus on schools that some of the other speakers have already touched on, and making sure that pupils could get to and from school in a safe manner. That was part of our School Streets programme. We also understood the priority and importance of open space and parks, and how important that is for people's well-being during this time, to make sure that they were accessible for all and that people could move around those in a safe manner. And also then obviously the key commercial areas and the opening of sort of the hospitality industry and other sectors of the industry in mid-July. As I said at the beginning, we kind of split this into two sections. So the first one, section of the movement strategy, was very much focused on key transport hubs, key walking and cycling routes. So we put in dedicated cycle lanes or bus lanes that also allowed cycling. We looked at widening pavement into the roadway to allow people enough space so that they could move around the city in a socially distanced way, to encourage them back onto the streets and feel that they could be safe and secure moving around in the environment. Also part of that programme was our School Streets programme. As part of the movement strategy, we implemented 12 temporary school streets, obviously mainly focused at primary schools because they were the ones that were open prior to the summer. They've obviously all come off the streets now, but they will all be going back in September. And we have a programme to support secondary schools with school streets as well going forward. And also part of the phase one was providing temporary cycle parking to support the cycle lanes that we were putting in. There's a map here. I'm sure it might be a bit small for some of you on the screen, but that's the whole of Westminster. It gives you a sense of the scale of the number of projects and the areas that we covered within the first phase of the scheme. The second part of the scheme was very much focused, as I said before, on supporting the hospitality industry on the basis that to allow them to operate under the new regulations and social distancing, they needed more space out on the street so they could increase the number of covers they've got in restaurants and allow their businesses to be economically viable. So what we did was to actually look at key commercial areas where there were hubs of businesses that might require this intervention, and then look at how we could facilitate space on the street for them to operate. This map shows you, I think there's 59, I think we're over 59, 60 odd interventions that we have implemented already across Westminster to support the hospitality industry. All of these maps are available on our website. I think the links might have gone in the chat or be going in the chat. Just to give you a quick idea of how we've implemented them. So some of these might have been where areas were already effectively closed, the streets were already closed and pedestrianised. We looked at extending the amount of area that you've got for outdoor dining. In some of the areas, we've actually taken space away from the carriageway to allow dining either on the carriageway or against the pavement and people to go out onto the carriageway, or else we've closed streets in their entirety and allowed dining actually on the street and with pedestrian movements down either side. And as I said before, from that map, there's 60 odd schemes that we've developed within the hospitality, and we've timed closed over 21 streets across Westminster, which is quite a major feat in the timescale that we've done it. I think what's really interesting is the way that we've delivered these schemes is obviously incredibly different to normal because we've had to act incredibly quickly. We've engaged as much as we can with councillors, local residents groups, businesses, landowners, but also with the wider freight industry and the taxi industry. But as was previously said by Martin, we've actually had to put these schemes in and then effectively do a lot of iteration once the schemes have actually gone in. That's particularly in relation to delivery and servicing has been one of the key issues. Although we looked at it as we developed schemes, we've been able to modify schemes as they move forward. Just to give you some feedback, these are some quotes from some of the businesses that have been supported by our scheme, and they've many of them have actually said they would have gone out of business without the schemes that we've implemented to allow them to trade on the streets. And obviously there's many schools that have been supported, and to build on to build on the lack of transport that we've had in the city, we've managed to reclaim it for pedestrians. So that's been really helpful. So as I said at the beginning, the movement strategy that we've developed is our short-term response to COVID, and it does provided with us with a unique opportunity to trial ideas. The conversation about what happens next is now taking place and is obviously really pertinent to the topic of this seminar, and we are evaluating the success of these current schemes and also looking at longer-term options around the implementation of low-traffic neighbourhoods, and to consider how we could respond and evolve in the longer term to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to look at how our city operates. So that's all from me. Thank you. If you have any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. Yeah, really, really interesting talk there. We've had a few questions from the audience. I think we'll start with a question from Flick Harris. Flick's asked whether Westminster has any guidelines for wheelchair users and the visually impaired within your approach to these pedestrian priority streets, and potentially also your movement strategy then. So so Flick has made reference to Manchester's Design for Access 2. I'm not sure whether you're aware of that, but would you be able to kind of clarify maybe some of the things that you're being able to put in place to help those who are using?
Yes, I can answer that. We haven't got a separate set of guidelines per se for use of these spaces for accessibility uses. However, although all these schemes were done at speed, as many things like this were taken into consideration. So particularly on the time closed streets, this is an example actually of where we've actually got dining actually in the carriageway, but many of them are just sort of time closed and still have access for transport down the middle. Although they're marshalled, there are all those streets are accessible for anybody who's arriving in a vehicle with any disabilities, and they have access to those streets. So from a vehicle disability access, we've tried to maintain as much access as possible. With regard to actually using these streets, we've all the designs, although you can't actually see it in this particular example, all the pavements have got at least 1.8 to 2 metres width available for people to move along, and to the same standard that they were previously. I'm not going to deny that some of the designs that we've had may cause us some concerns, and where we've been looking at the layout of outdoor dining. So one of the reasons we've actually put a lot of the outdoor dining in the street is to keep the footway free, which was already sort of operating, and people knew how to negotiate those areas. And what we tried to avoid was people having to drop down off the curb onto the roadway and back up again. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that, Sarah. We'll just quickly then, because we've got another 2 minutes left, we'll just go for a question from Franco. So Franco said that the road closure measures are all well and good, but will they be reversed or removed if they don't work or cause unintended consequences elsewhere?
As I said at the beginning, these are Westminster's short-term responses to coming out of COVID, and they are temporary measures. At the moment, all of these schemes are programmed to be removed at the end of September. The wider conversation needs to be had about how some of them might evolve, or what might happen in the future based on a lot of evaluation of how these are operated. So at the moment, they're all coming out. But we are evaluating all of them, and as I said before, they've all gone in under experimental orders, so we've got that opportunity for people to respond, and if they don't work, yes, they will come out, and no, they won't go back in again.
Brilliant. Thank you for letting us know, Sarah. Great. Okay then, so I know that we've had a flurry of questions through for you, so and we're running slightly short on time, so what we'll do is we'll pass these over to you, Sarah, if that's okay, to provide a response. Then I'll get back to all the attendees with an answer to their questions, if that's okay. That's fine, no problem at all. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And let's then swiftly move on. Let's move on to Ross Phillips. So Ross is a project officer here at Crossroads Partnership. He works on the Healthy Streets Everyday programme and also the Clean Air Villages programme. And Ross will be talking a little bit more about making streets safe for communities and schools. So over to you, Ross.
Thanks, Thomas. I hope everyone can hear me okay. As Thomas said, I'm Ross from CRP. I'm here to talk to you about making streets safe for communities and schools. So air quality is the largest environmental health risk in the UK. Two pollutants in London are attributed as a main source of poor air quality: particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide. 50% of all nitrogen dioxide emissions in London come from road transport, and it has huge impacts on the physical and mental health of the population, often disproportionately impacting more vulnerable members of society. So COVID-19 has shown the importance of reshaping our streets. Many of us now operate with a far more local radius than we ever had thought we could, with more remote working and less time spent in central urban districts. Suburban areas are now seeing more people spend time and money. It's seeing global city thinkers toy with the idea of a 15-minute city where people can have access to most of their daily requirements by not having to travel for more than 15 minutes by walking or cycling. But we need ways of travelling around suburban areas safely, often that haven't been purposed for this use, and we need to connect the urban and surrounding suburban areas. So traffic-free streets can act as a crucial nexus of play, exercise and social interactions in communities, and a hub for local economic activity, all whilst being more beneficial for our health and the environment. The pandemic has reinforced the need for our streets to become places for people. The Healthy Streets approach is a global policy framework that puts people and their health at the centre of decisions about how we design, manage and use public spaces. On the screen shows the 10 Healthy Streets indicators that underpin the approach. So healthy streets need to have pedestrians from all walks of life, be easy to cross, have shade and shelter, places to stop and rest, not too noisy, where people choose to walk, cycle and use public transport. People are safe, they have things to see and do, people feel relaxed and provide clean air. So our Healthy Streets Everyday project is a cross-sector project for 17 partner organisations to empower boroughs, businesses and communities across London to deliver people priority healthy streets, also increasing cycling and walking rates and reduce emissions and exposure to toxic air pollution. We've got 3 key work streams shown on the screen: streetscape improvements, new traffic regulations and car-free behaviour. We're mostly looking at kind of new traffic regulations, but streetscape improvements are part of low traffic neighbourhoods. School streets contribute to car-free behaviour. There's a lot of links between the work streams, but it's all part of contributing to a holistic healthy street solution. So low traffic neighbourhoods are groups of residential streets bordered by main or distributor roads where through motor vehicle traffic is discouraged or removed. So why do we need them? Well, the image shows that there's not much space on London's pavements for social distancing, shown by the large amount of red and orange on the map. And the benefits of low traffic neighbourhoods can be great. They can increase active travel and physical activity by creating safe conditions for walking and cycling. The removal of cars reduces air pollution and traffic collisions. It can make economic destinations easier to walk and cycle to, particularly important for COVID-19. It provides more space for pedestrians during COVID-19 and can be relatively cheap and quick to implement compared with other schemes. So firstly, I'll point towards a great resource by Living Streets, London Cycling Campaign and Rose Hill Highway on a guide to low traffic neighbourhoods. Healthy Streets Everyday programme is helping to fund 3 low traffic neighbourhoods such as Brackenbury Village in Hammersmith and Fulham, and also producing guidance on low traffic initiatives such as our recently produced parklets guidance as well. But there are some really key considerations for low traffic neighbourhoods. Size and location, about kind of a 15-minute walk end to end. I know accessibility has been mentioned in the chat a lot, and that's really important for anyone with impaired mobility to make sure there's provision around the outside of the neighbourhood and within. Good transport and travel connectivity, and make sure there's active travel infrastructure as well. So low traffic neighbourhoods initiatives can include restrictions on traffic, modal filters such as using planters or bollards, which if you use a planter has an additional benefit of greening, improving active travel infrastructure such as cycle lanes or footway widening, parklets or streetscape improvements, and a good example of time changes are school streets or play streets. Play streets particularly are COVID permitting at the moment, but school streets can be really useful coming around to September. So a school street is a road outside a school with a temporary restriction on motorised traffic at school drop-off and pick-up times. So why do we need them? Well, research in 2018 by TfL showed that 25% of the morning rush hour in London is parents dropping off children at school. But they can be great for a number of things. They can reduce local pollutant exposure to high population numbers at specific times. This reduces the risks of cardiovascular and lung diseases, including asthma in children, and contribute to a healthier lung development as well. They can create safer environments without fast-moving vehicles and reduce collisions. So statistics from the Department of Transport revealed that 14% of children killed on Great Britain's roads in 2018 were between the morning school run, and 23% were after school between 3 to 5 p.m. It's great for encouraging active travel and healthier lifestyles for children by improving physical activity, reducing childhood obesity, improving healthy brain development, academic performance and mental health, and also a really important topic around independent mobility at the moment in kind of play-proofing towns, cities and streets for children. Again, and a really important note about accessibility, lots of school streets operate with a blue badge and emergency services exemption policy, so it doesn't unfairly penalise impaired mobility. Exemptions may also be made for temporary disabilities as well, and residents that live along the street. So it shouldn't penalise people that it can't that they can't do anything about. School streets are also a brilliant adaptation strategy for COVID-19. They can create more space and reduce the burden on public transport, and encourage social distancing. Space is at a premium at the moment. It's important to give schools space, given that they're intended to go back to normal in September or in most of the UK. So this is pretty vital as well. So our Healthy Streets Every Day programme is helping partners to implement over 30 play in school streets. The TfL street space initiatives are encouraging quickly implemented schemes and fast-tracking initiatives, but also really, really good resources. The Hackney School Street Toolkit for Professionals, published last year. It's got some really great promotional and campaign material as well that you can use for inspiration in your area too. So how do you implement a school street? Well, the kind of key considerations that you want to be making are, you want to set up a diverse network of stakeholders comprising people working at emergency services, the local authority, schools, local businesses, pupils and residents. You want to select appropriate schools and streets that are based on pollution levels, ensuring they're not on bus routes, main roads, and stop any emergency access, but also on highly polluted areas that would really benefit from the changes. And if you can, collect baseline data before you install them. Consult and engage with stakeholders and use the stakeholders and networks available to you, and create really great communications, signage and content that always relate back to the original aims of the project. You want to decide on some enforcement measures, whether they're kind of softer or harder as well. So ANPR or perhaps some patrolling officers. And you want to implement the scheme with an appropriate launch that may be very different to a year ago, given the circumstances we're in at the moment. And if you can, evaluate the scheme and then continually improve on it, and celebrate the successes of improved air quality in travel modal shifts, and communicate the results to the public, who'll be really interested to hear how it's gone. Now, I guess if you're looking at it from a community perspective as a school or parent, Mums for Lungs resources are really great. They've got a campaign guide on raising awareness, spreading the word and who to talk to, and also an emergency school street letter to send to key stakeholders such as head teachers, counsellors, school street officers in your area as well. Now, one of our funded projects is the Hackney School Streets Hotline, and it continues to be very well used. It's been extended to the end of September, and it's available to any London borough, regardless of whether they're part of HSC or not. The service provides users with tailored one-to-one support, as well as up-to-the-minute site-specific advice from Hackney, and it's in alignment with TfL's advice as well. So Hackney are a HSC partner who have years of direct on-the-ground experience in implementing school streets. The service can be used for just general programs, but as well as that, individual school streets too. So please feel free to contact Fiona or myself if you'd like more details about the free service. But Hackney is a great example. They've implemented 9 school streets in the borough with a further 9 proposed, a real pioneer. Sarah's already touched on the great work that Westminster have done with 12 temporary additions to Westminster. But the first 4 school streets in Hackney showed that traffic reduced by an average of 68%. The number of children cycling to school increased by 51%, and vehicle emissions outside schools are down by 74% as well. So there's been positive results recorded there. There've been positive results recorded around London, for example, in Eltham as well. So London school streets can use a range of methods to implement them, and I guess it can be applied across the UK too. So I guess the first kind of quick and low cost method may be as simple as installing some planters or expanding safety barriers on each end of the road once permission has been given to implement the school street, and it may be moved at proposed times at the drop-off and pick-up times as well. This can be seen in the image by Southwark Council there. And it may be a really good COVID-19 option too. In terms of the second option, it's probably more around kind of solid technology enforcement and a longer term solution. So Hackney Council use ANPR cameras to enforce the school street with a £65 fine for any breaches. Bollards or automatic rising bollards have been used across the UK and in London. But again, really important to note, blue badge, resident and emergency services exemptions are all available for all of this as well. So CAV 3 aims to improve the air quality in 16 different London villages where both air pollution and population density levels are high through low traffic behaviour and on-the-ground engagement. Some of our schemes include the Clean Air Walking Route, which aims to encourage people to take routes that are marginally different in length, but much less exposure to local pollution, introduced electronically assisted cargo bikes and last mile deliveries to businesses, which take traffic off the road one vehicle at a time. It's important to consider, particularly with the expansion of the ultra low emission zone in October 2021. And also a community ambassador program that's starting up very soon, which aims to find community pioneers to share and educate on low traffic behaviour in specific boroughs as well. So please contact Stav about that as well. Her details should be provided in the chat. But yeah, to summarise, COVID-19's highlighted the need for more space on our streets. We need to seize the opportunity and ensure community and residents are supportive and all access requirements are taken care of. The schemes are great for providing more independent mobility, creating a healthier population and improving air quality. We want to create leisurely environments for people to enjoy, socially interact, spend money, relax and take in green space, and for children to play, learn and travel safely. But we also need to utilise the many campaign materials and resources available to support and promote low traffic and green initiatives where appropriate as well. So thank you for listening, everyone, and here's some useful resources as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that presentation, Ross. Some really great initiatives there that you've mentioned. Let's then look at a few questions, shall we? We've got about a minute, so what I'll do is I'll just ask you one quick question now, and then any questions that are in the chat, I'll email over to Ross and Fiona to answer just very quickly. But so very quickly then, Ross, I know that you did mention it briefly, but it's now too late for a school or local authority to implement a school street in time for September?
It's likely to differ borough by borough, but likely not to be too late. I think the important thing to note is if you are starting now, it's not the end of the world. It's more important for these kind of temporary measures to be implemented properly. But I still believe that it might be a tight turnaround, but I think you can get them put in. But yeah, again, I would recommend just putting an appointment in with the Hackney School Streets Hotline, which is really, really useful as well. So there's no reason why it couldn't be worked out that you see challenges in your school at some point and you want to put one in September as well, you work that out in September. So, but it's obviously recommended to get a head start earlier on as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ross. And yeah, as I've mentioned, the questions that I've asked in the chat, I'll pass them over to both Ross and Fiona to answer, and we'll get an answer back to you very, very soon. Well, perfect. Well, thank you, Ross, and thank you to all the speakers. Some extremely insightful presentations today, and I hope you've all found them useful, and they provided you with some further insight into pedestrian priority streets, not only for schools, but also businesses and also our health. So before we finish and go to the final poll, I'd just like to wrap things up with a final question for our speakers. So I know that many may be sceptical of pedestrian priority streets, so I just wanted to pose the question of, is now the right time to potentially be implementing these streets? And what advice would you give to community members, to schools, businesses, and the wider general public who may be sceptical of the concept? So let's go in reverse order. So we'll go back to Ross. Ross, in about 20 seconds, would you be able to give a very brief answer to that?
Yes, so I'd say obviously improving walking and cycling conditions in London is great, and obviously viral transmission has been kind of shown to be less outdoors. But to anyone that's sceptical, I mean, change is scary, but a lot of these measures are temporary. So see it as a trial, and you will have lots of opportunity to give feedback, hopefully, as well. So yeah, see it as a temporary measure, and just evaluate the kind of costs and the benefits as you see them as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ross. And Sarah?
Right, I'm here just waiting. Yeah, okay. I would echo the same thing, actually. Yes, I think now is the right time. The radical change in sort of traffic volumes in the city and the subsequent impact on massive improvements in air quality, I think, is something to be built on, and that move to more sustainable modes of travel. With regards to people who are sceptical and stuff, I think quite a lot of stuff's already been said about schools and school streets and things like that. What's interesting from the perspective of the movement strategy with regard to businesses, as I said, many of the businesses have been really, really supportive of the move to shut many of the streets to allow outdoor dining. However, there are key concerns around parking in particular, where I think a little bit of behaviour change and stuff needs to be encouraged, because many businesses still see parking as important. But what's one of the really important things is delivery and servicing, which makes up most of the traffic within Westminster. It's given us a really, really key opportunity to start challenging some of those behaviours around delivery and servicing, because businesses are seeing the benefit of closing the streets. So I think now is definitely the right time, and we've got to build on this change.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And over to you, Martin, very briefly.
Yeah, I echo what they both said. I mean, every school street, new speed limit, protected cycle lane or road filters always going to have a little bit of pushback. I'd say just know your facts. I know TfL released some stats around the pedestrian pound and how high streets actually do better when pedestrianised. So that argument around it being detrimental to business, I think, can definitely be challenged. And we know that 25% of the journeys around the UK are under 2 miles, so there's massive appetite for it. I think just know your facts.
Great, thank you. And Susanna?
Yeah, I think the message is loud and clear for us all to be giving, and that is that the car is no longer king.
Brilliant. Exactly. Thank you very much, Susanna. So great. So before you all leave to resume your afternoons, just like to bring up a poll just to get the audience's perspective here. So would you like to see more pedestrian priority streets in your local area? It's just to give an idea to see where everyone's at. Right. Well, brilliant. 100%. That is lovely to see. So great. So we'll just quickly head back to the slides then, because I know that we're just 3 o'clock on the dot. So just like to point everyone in the direction of our next LiveShare session. This will be on Thursday, August the 27th at the same time, 2 p.m. The topic of the session will be keeping our air clean. It's everyone's responsibility. So do join us for this, and yeah, for everyone to see what they can do to help clean the air we breathe. As the Eventbrite for this will be issued very shortly, so do keep an eye out. And finally, also remember to sign up to our newsletter and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to receive all of our latest updates here at CRP and upcoming LiveShare sessions. The registration link for our next event will be publicised via these platforms very shortly too, so do keep an eye out. This LiveShare, our past LiveShares and all of our future LiveShares will be posted on our YouTube page for you to view whenever you want and also to share with whoever you want. Any questions you have or any comments at all, do not hesitate to get in contact with myself or any of the speakers. And our contact details are on your screens now. And well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for some really thought-provoking presentations, and a big thank you to everyone here for tuning in and joining us this afternoon. So remember to stay safe, and we'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.